I discovered an ancient tomb where prehistoric humans faced a terrifying fate. I never should have opened that door. The cold air rushed out like a whisper from the grave. I stood there, frozen, heart racing. The dim glow from my flashlight barely pierced the thick darkness ahead. My palms were clammy, and I could feel my breath quickening. What lurked beyond that threshold? An empty room. But it smelled of damp earth and something rotten. I had come here to learn, to uncover secrets of the past, but it felt impossible. Shadows danced along the walls, flickering with every movement of the light. My fingers trembled, itching to retreat, but curiosity held me captive. I had heard the legends of the tomb, the lore told in hushed tones around campfires. Tales of a cursed resting place where ancient humans faced unspeakable horrors. Was it true? I took a cautious step forward. The floor creaked beneath me, a sinister warning. My heart pounded like a drum. The air grew heavier, charged with an unsettling energy. I felt it, the presence of something unseen. A rustling sound echoed from the far corner. My breath hitched. Was there something in there with me? The light flickered. Shadows stretched, twisting like tortured souls. I gripped the flashlight tighter, the metal cold against my palm. I took another step. A soft whisper slipped through the air, slithering into my ears. It wasn't in a language I knew, but the fear seeped into my bones. It felt like a warning. Or was it a beckoning? I needed to leave. Now. But my feet felt glued to the floor. I could hear the faint sound of stones shifting, the mournful creaking of age and despair. Panic rose inside me, squeezing my chest like a vice. A voice inside screamed for me to turn back, but I couldn't. I pushed deeper into the tomb. Suddenly, a stone skittered across the floor, stopped abruptly, as if a hand had pressed down upon it. My throat tightened. I turned, searching the faint edges of darkness, desperate to see what lurked beyond. My flashlight flickered once more. Everything stilled. No sound. No breath. Then, the light went out. Darkness enveloped me, thick and suffocating. I fumbled with the flashlight, panic clawing at my throat. The silence split like a knife as I heard a shuffle, closer this time. My heart raced. I could feel it, a breath on the back of my neck. "What's there?" I demanded. The sound stopped. The air tensed, heavy with dread. I strained my eyes, willing them to pierce through the dark. Suddenly, a figure emerged, its shape grotesque, distorted, looming over me. I gasped, the scream caught in my throat. The last thing I saw before everything went black was that face, twisted in an eternal scream. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness held me in a suffocating grip, smothering all sense of time and space. I was alone, yet I could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting, yearning. My senses strained, desperate to grasp any remnant of light, any whisper of sound. But all that surrounded me was a chilling stillness, as if the world had suspended its breath in anticipation. When I awoke, the cold floor was unforgiving against my skin. I pushed myself up, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm as I blinked against the oppressive shadows. The flashlight lay a few feet away, miraculously intact. I crawled toward it, groping through the thick, damp air. My fingers finally closed around the cool metal, and I switched it on again, eager to illuminate my surroundings. The beam of light sliced through the murk, revealing crumbling walls adorned with ancient glyphs, their meanings lost to time but emanating an aura of despair. My heartbeat quickened as I scanned the corners of the room. The figure before the darkness had swallowed me was nowhere to be seen. A trick of the mind? Or had I truly been witnessed by something unspeakable? I stood, brushing dust from my clothes, forcing bravery into my bones. I had come too far, and dread coursed through me, not just because of what I had experienced but for what lay ahead. I took a step forward, the echo of my footfall swallowed by the tomb's eerie silence. Then, I heard it. A low, guttural growl that reverberated from the depths of the corridor ahead. The air shifted, as if something had slipped through the fabric of reality, and I took an involuntary step back. The primal part of me screamed to flee, to escape this maze of death. But a shiver of curiosity kept my legs rooted. What kind of being lurked here? What horror awaited me? As I moved cautiously down the corridor, the walls loomed closer, constricting like a serpent coiling around its prey. The growls morphed into whispers, dark, velvety murmurs that crept into my ears like the caress of a lover's breath, promising secrets and terrors untold. My pulse quickened. I could no longer discern whether those whispers were a figment of my imagination or calls from the very souls trapped within the stone. Suddenly, a chill prickled my skin, and the whispers intensified, forming a chorus of voices, each one speaking in frantic urgency. I pressed my palms against my ears, desperate to block out their haunting cries, but their lament reached into my mind, awakening the raw edges of my soul. They spoke of pain, of betrayal, of lives entwined in a horrific tapestry woven across countless millennia. I felt their anguish seep into my bones. "Leave this place," they clamored, their voices intertwining in a heart-wrenching symphony. I hesitated. The sounds overwhelmed me, and I stumbled backward into an alcove. My heart raced. Could they truly guide me? Or was this a cruel trick of the darkness? But before I could ponder further, an icy breath brushed the nape of my neck, freezing me in place. The air crackled with icy energy, and I spinned around to confront what lurked behind me. The corridor stretched into an endless void, shadows weaving what looked like limbs, fingers extending from the dark, beckoning me closer. A single silhouette emerged, no longer grotesque, but hauntingly familiar. It was a woman, her face lined with shadow, eyes hollow pools of despair. "Come, it's safe here," she crooned, and the sound sent a jolt of recognition through me. I had seen her before. She was etched into those ancient glyphs, a lost soul trapped in this cursed realm. But before I could process her words, the shadows lurked back into the corners of the tomb, the whispers escalating into anguished screams. I stumbled, grappling with my rational mind, torn between the woman's call and the warning of the ancient spirits. The walls of the tomb seemed to breathe, pulsating with a malevolent rhythm, and then it happened. The ground shook violently, sending rocks tumbling down from above. I cried out, falling to my knees as darkness poured in like ink, suffocating the light. "You shouldn't have come." The woman screamed, her voice filled with unrestrained despair as she was ripped from view, consumed by the deep shadows. I scrambled to rise, but the stone floor bucked beneath me. The tomb was awakening, a monstrous beast with a heartbeat that drummed in tandem with my own. In that moment of chaos, I caught sight of something in the shadows, a reflection. A portal, glowing, shimmering, impossibly inviting, and just as I thought to leap towards it, a laughter echoed, diabolical and triumphant, crashing against the very bones of the earth around me, and with a final, heart-stopping tremor, the ground split open beneath me, pulling me down into the abyss. As I plummeted into the chasm, an abyss of darkness enveloped me, swallowing my cries before they could escape my throat. Time became irrelevant, seconds morphed into an eternity as I descended through an endless void. The coldness wrapped around me like a shroud, whispering promises of despair and secrets buried within the earth. Just when I thought I would fall forever, the ground met me with a jarring thud, the impact knocking the breath from my lungs. Gasping, I pulled myself up, desperate to gather my bearings. As my mind cleared, I realized I wasn't alone. Shadows danced in the periphery, flickering in and out of focus like wisps of smoke. I turned, scanning my surroundings with the trembling beam of my flashlight that barely cut through the thick, murky air. My heart thundered as I caught glimpses of grotesque shapes morphing and weaving against the cave walls, ogres of shadow, born from the collective fears of those who had ventured here before. That I stood in a cavernous chamber, vast and echoing, the very air thick with dread. Stalactites hung like fangs from the ceiling above, and the palpable energy of the place prickled at my skin. It was here, deep within this ancient tomb, that time itself seemed to unravel, revealing a history riddled with horror. The whispers began anew, feral, malevolent, echoing through the chamber like a dreadful symphony. The voices spun tales of sacrificial rites and blood-soaked altars, each crawled from a chasm of suffering, their cries clawing at the remnants of my sanity. Flickering figures flitted in my peripheral vision, half-formed silhouettes that beckoned me deeper into the chamber. I had to know what horrors lay ahead, what truths slumbered beneath the soil. Against all reason, curiosity gnawed at me a dark hunger. As I stepped forward, icy fingers reached out from the shadows, grazing my skin with an icy chill that stole the warmth from my bones. I recoiled, panting, resolving to ignore the invisible grip that tried to stifle me. But before I could turn back, a hardened whimper pierced the darkness, a sound that clawed at my heart. "Help me," it pleaded, low and desperate that I hesitated, fighting against the urge to flee. The voice was hauntingly familiar, a kindred plea for salvation. It twined through the chaos, pulling me closer, compelling me to search for its source. The shadows parted momentarily, revealing a figure, bound and immobile, on a stone slab in the center of the chamber. The stench of decay mingled unnaturally with the air, forming a grotesque bouquet that made my stomach churn. My breath caught as recognition struck, and the world seemed to tilt. It was her, the woman whose ghostly visage had appeared to me in the corridor, the embodiment of an ancient sorrow. Her eyes, hollow yet striking, locked onto mine, radiating an overwhelming despair. "You must," she gasped, but before she could finish her plea, jagged stones erupted from the walls, cutting off her words and enclosing her in a jagged cage. "What happened to you?" I cried, feeling the walls constrict around my heart, the gravity of her misery settling heavy upon my chest. "Free me," she whispered, her form flickering as if the shadows were intent on devouring her whole. Before it a feral roar filled the chamber, drowning out her cries. The ground trembled, and darkness surged as vile creatures materialized from the shadows, grotesque forms, tall and hunched, eyes glowing like coals of malice. They brandished twisted, rusted weapons that glimmered with an otherworldly shine, the air thick with their foul breath. They began to dance, a demonic masquerade circling the slab, their movements rhythmically synchronized with the thunder of my heartbeat. "No." I stumbled back, but it was too late. They turned their gaze upon me, mouths stretching into inhumanly wide grins, revealing rows of jagged teeth. The whispers escalated to a deafening crescendo, demanding retribution as the earth beneath my feet shook violently. "No!" I screamed, my voice breaking. I rushed toward the woman, desperate to reach her before the shadows seized me. "I won't leave you." Her hollow eyes met my frantic gaze as her form grew fainter, spectral tears slipping down her cheeks. "It's too late," she rasped. "Run!" Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, cloaking the chamber in an impenetrable darkness. I could feel the air thickening around me, closing in like a vice. But just as I turned to flee, a blinding light burst forth from the stone altar, engulfing everything in its glow. That I stumbled backward, clenching my eyes shut against the brilliance. In a heartbeat, the light flickered and extinguished, leaving behind an echoing silence. When I dared to open my eyes again, the woman was gone, replaced by an unholy darkness that whispered my name. "Run!" A chorus scuttled through the air, but before I could move, a shadow lunged at me, hands grasping for my throat with inhuman speed. The very ground trembled as I realized, in that terrifying moment, I was not alone in the darkness. And as I turned to escape, the walls shifted, twisting, morphing into a labyrinth with no end, trapping me inside a nightmare of my own making. I stood at the threshold of despair, frozen with fear, as a low growl echoed from behind me, a reminder that my time was running out. The growl reverberated through the chamber, vibrating deep within my bones, causing a primal instinct to surge in my veins. I didn't wait to see what grotesque horror it belonged to, the instinct to flee was overpowering. I turned on my heel, racing through the suffocating darkness that clung to my skin like a second layer, heavy and clammy. My flashlight flickered erratically, the beam barely illuminating the jagged walls that twisted around me as I dashed into the labyrinth. Each corner I turned felt like a futile attempt to escape an unseen predator. The atmosphere thickened, a pungent mixture of damp earth and something far more sinister, rotting flesh, perhaps, from the long-dead souls entwined within the rock. With every desperate footfall against the ground, the whispers escalated, their voices swirling into a cacophony that pushed against my eardrums. "Stay, join us," they coaxed, promising dark delights that gnawed at the fringes of my sanity. Shadows flitted by, taunting me with their ephemeral forms, each one a reminder of the wretched spirits trapped within these walls, hunting for company. As I rounded a corner, I stumbled, almost losing my footing before catching myself against the cold, unyielding stone. My breath came in shallow gasps. I pressed onward, traits of survival kicking in as I weaved through the maze. But just as I thought I had steadied my pace, the ground began to tremble anew, sending ominous vibrations up my legs. Suddenly, a cacophony of howls filled the air, horrific, bone-chilling cries that echoed like a symphony of the damned. They surrounded me, engulfing the very fabric of reality, as if the spirits of the place were awakening, calling all that was lost back to their eternal tomb. In that moment of primal fear, I turned once more, and there it stood, a titan of shadow, an entity of pure nightmare. Its dimensions eclipsed the faint light that dared to illuminate, creating a vortex of deeper shadows swirling around it. Eyes like smoldering coals burned from the cavernous darkness, locking onto me with a malevolence that froze me in my tracks. That I could feel its essence reach out, curling around my throat like an iron grip, suffocating my resolve. Memories of distant whispers flitted through my mind, glimpses of those who had come before, lost to the abyss, their faces twisted in anguish as they succumbed to despair. With a final surge of adrenaline, I fought against the grip of fear and took off again, weaving through the shadows as they stretched out, almost yearning to ensnare me in their twisted embrace. That I could hear it behind me, the deep, guttural growls morphing into laughs, a sound reminiscent of broken glass crunching beneath the feet of the damned. With every footfall, the ground beneath me fractured, as if the very earth resented my presence. I dashed toward a sliver of light that shimmered like a beacon in the distance, a thin hope flickering through the realms of terror. Each step was a clawing battle, the shadows lunged at my heels, gnashing their teeth as they threatened to pull me into their abyss. I pushed forward, fueled by sheer desperation, as the laughter continued to peel back layers of my sanity, revealing the primal fears woven within my soul. But as I neared the luminous crack, it flickered violently. Panic surged through me, the realization washing over as I closed the distance. I was not headed toward salvation but deeper into the mouth of madness. The light flared one last time, illuminating the twisted face of the shadow beast as it roared, an explosion of primal fury rippling through the air. The world around me began to collapse, the chamber closing in like an iron cage, and I could feel the ancient curse of this forsaken tomb tightening its hold. Then, the light shattered, casting me into darkness once more. But just before it vanished completely, a grotesque truth appeared, a reflection of my worst fear, an unnameable horror that slithered along the edges of my mind, threatening to plunge me into despair. And then, I heard it, a soft voice, sweet and sinister, surging forth from the shadows, wrapping around my heart like a vice. "Will you join us?" As my feet faltered upon the crumbling ground, I knew in that moment, the walls of the tomb weren't just closing in, they were swallowing me whole, ready to claim another soul to add to their eternal horror. With a final agonizing scream, the darkness swallowed me, and I was left teetering on the precipice of oblivion. The darkness clung to me as I stumbled through the void, trapped in a reality that twisted and writhed like a living organism. My mind flared with panic, clawing at the air as if it had form and substance, while the echoes of lost souls enveloped me, thousands of whispers rising and falling, pulsing like a grotesque chant. Their words were an unintelligible murmur, draping over me like a shroud of despair. No escape, they intoned, their voices merging into a singular plea that wrapped around my heart like a cold, iron chain. It felt as if they were both warning and beckoning, a duality that churned my insides with dread. As the echo of my scream faded into an eerie silence, an oppressive weight bore down upon me, an unseen anchor that pulled me deeper into the abyss of this forsaken tomb. I felt my body being drawn to the ground, no longer a mere fragment of flesh, but a soul destined to remain with those who had been lost before me. Just when I thought the darkness would consume me entirely, the atmosphere shifted, the very essence of the air crackled with energy, vibrating in resonance with the voices of centuries. The shadow above began to swell, and from it emerged a thick mist, swirling with colors both vibrant and sickly. I blinked against the intrusion, desperate to discern what might lie ahead. Then, through the oppressive haze, emerged shapes, ghostly outlines of forms that belonged to the living once. I could make out their features with piercing clarity, their eyes hollow, mouths agape in silent screams, trapped in an expression of eternal torment. They reached for me, fingers outstretched, yearning to connect, to draw me into their torment. I ran again, debilitating terror gnawing at my insides, spurred by a grim acceptance that time was no longer my ally. The mist thickened, coiling around me like a serpent, seeping into my lungs with every breath. I stumbled into a chamber, and the very walls pulsed with a sickly green fluorescence that illuminated the grotesque history etched into stone. Carvings of those who had come before me depicted visceral scenes of sacrifice and suffering. I turned away, but the images clawed at my mind, replaying like a grotesque slideshow, the desperate faces, the blood-laden earth, the primal scream that transcended time. Each depiction was a confession, a tale of those who found themselves ensnared in this dark underbelly of despair, only to meet their ends in the hands of the very shadows that now whispered my name. Sudden footsteps reverberated behind me, echoing through the vastness, a predatory rhythm that sank my heart into a fresh pit of anguish. I spun, breath-catching, when I beheld a figure emerge from the gloom, its form flickering like a candle's flame. At first, it appeared ethereal, a wraith-like presence, but the closer it drew, the more solid it became. Midair just below me, I recognized the gleam of its twisted horned visage. It bore my face, a mocking reflection of all that I had once known, a grotesque parody of my existence. That white doppelganger smiled, revealing rows of blackened teeth, a smile that spoke of hunger and pain. "You'll never be free, we are bound, forever entwined," it crooned, a sickening sweetness merging with the rancid scent of decay that seeped from the very stones of the tomb. My own voice came forth, a hollow echo that dripped with regret. "You belong with us." The ground beneath me began to churn, shuddering as if warring between two opposing forces, the essence of my identity clashing with the darkness that sought its claim over my soul. The eerie shimmer intensified, revealing the countless faces of the damned contorted in anguish as they drew nearer, their collective energy swelling into a deafening roar. With every pulse of the shadows, something inside me twisted painfully, a desperate longing to escape colliding with the insistent pull of the grotesque family I had found among the spirits. In that fleeting moment, I felt their hunger, an insatiable craving for another soul to join their ranks, not just for sustenance, but for an eternity of companionship in their shared anguish. As I turned to flee once more, the entire tomb shuddered, walls crumbling like a house of cards, and the spectral beings enveloped me, each face reflecting my worst fears and regrets. "Join us," they chorused, a melodic torment that promised both clarity and despair, but a single thought crystallized in the chaos, freezing the rising tide of panic within me: what if joining them was my only chance to escape this suffocating prison? As I stood at the crossroads of salvation and damnation, a piercing scream, my own voice, shattered the fragile barrier of resolve. It surged through the tomb, echoing off the ancient stones as a blinding light erupted in the gloom. And just as my reflection lunged, a piercing truth hit me like a tidal wave: it wasn't a choice, it was an inevitable consequence of all that I had become. Then, everything went dark again, leaving the horrifying question lingering in the silence: had I joined them, or was I yet another echo in the endless void? And then, a chilling realization swept over me, clawing at the edges of my frantic mind. How many had come before me? How many would come after? Would my face become just another hollow mask adorning the walls of the tomb, another whisper in the eternal night? But before I could ponder further, a new sound resonated, a low, guttural growl merging with human laughter, sinister and intoxicating. And in that insufferable darkness, I felt the ground tremble once more, marking the approach of something far more ancient and terrifying, ready to claim its next victim. The tremors beneath my feet intensified, reverberating through the very marrow of my bones, as the primal growls coalesced into a haunting symphony of despair. The spectral faces of the lost, with their hollow eyes and gaping mouths, began to fade into the shadows, their whispered pleas dissolving into an unsettling silence as something far more sinister emerged from the depths. I stepped back, my heart racing as the walls pulsated with a strong, rhythmic beat, echoing with the relentless intent of an awakening something. I scanned the chamber, trying to orient myself amidst the swirling mist and throbbing light, but it became difficult to differentiate between reality and the feverish nightmare that closed in around me. The grotesque carvings on the stone walls twisted, morphing into scenarios of dark rituals and sacrifices to ancient deities long lost to time. Each stone bore witness to the suffering of those who had once offered their very souls willingly, their faces now steeped in horror and regret, images of their disgrace etched forever in rock. Then the growling grew louder, a primal cadence building upon itself, pushing through the silence with malignant pressure. The source of that ominous sound materialized. From the swirling shadows came an enormous figure, a hulking beast, its silhouette punctuated by jagged horns that jutted into the obscured ceiling above. It had the rugged body of some long-forgotten predator, matted with decay, but it wore a crown of shifting, smoky shadows that twirled around as if alive, obscuring its true form. "Feed," it rumbled, the single word a terrible command that sliced through the gloom and pierced the resolve I struggled desperately to maintain. The room shuddered in anticipation, and I felt a sickening understanding settle in my gut. The beast existed because of the sacrifices of those who had preceded me, hunger radiating from it like a beacon drawing its next prey closer. That I stumbled, desperate to turn and flee, but as I pivoted toward the exit, dread dripped into the very pit of my being. My way out was shrouded in darkness. The entrance I had passed through was no longer visible, swallowed by an insurmountable wall of thick, billowing fog. The realization crashed over me with blunt force. My options had dwindled. I was ensnared, trapped in this ancient tomb that now seemed alive, a pulsating organism seeking to consume me in the throes of its hunger. The beast narrowed its gaze upon me, eyes glinting with a feral hunger that sizzled and crackled in the air between us. As it stepped closer, the floor quaked beneath each tremendous footfall, sending waves of dust and debris skittering across the chamber, scattering the shadows that clung to the walls like pests. "Join them," it murmured, the words dripping with malice. "Surrender your name, and your pain will cease." My heart pounded violently in my chest as the voices of the lost resurfaced, swirling around me in a cacophony of regret. "Join us," they implored me in a chilling harmony, urging me to embrace the darkness that promised belonging, a stable home in the void. But before I could wrestle with the terrifying choice or understand what fate awaited me, the chamber erupted in chaos. The very stones beneath me splintered and cracked, an unseen force tearing their bonds apart as the air condensed into a suffocating haze. The beast roared, a sound that ruptured the silence, vibrating through my core and fusing with the whispers of the damned. In its wrath, the floor convulsed as shadows exploded around me, shifting shapes whirling in a frenetic dance. Beneath my feet, the ground tore away, revealing a yawning abyss, a spiral void from which horrifying screams echoed, a collective cacophony of anguish and terror, beckoning me to join them. With a surge of adrenaline, I darted toward the collapsing structure, clutching at the fraying edges of sanity as tendrils of darkness reached out to ensnare me. Just as I leapt toward the gaping maw of the abyss, the beast extended its arm, clawed fingers lunging toward me, and an insatiable growl erupted from its mouth, drowning out all sound. Suddenly, everything shifted. The world obscured itself, blurring in the violent churn of nightmares and waking reality until a blinding flash erupted from the depths below, illuminating the chamber in a ghastly glow that revealed the true extent of the horrors again. And then, an ear-piercing scream cut through the chamber, the voice unmistakably mine, twisting with despair. I recognized the terror that ignited in my chest while the light distorted, leaving behind only the oppressive darkness, and within that dark void, I heard them once more. The voices of the lost began to rise again, their repetitive chant growing louder, eager to welcome yet another soul to their depths. And then, in that paralyzing moment, two shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, one, my own reflection, the other, an even darker echo, grinning back with that same ravenous hunger. The boundaries of reality blurred further, and as terror gripped me like icy fingers, I realized I was not merely imprisoned, I was becoming the essence of this ancient evil. And with that sinking dread, I faced the most horrifying thought yet. What if I had already lost my identity, and what if the next scream I heard was not mine, but the echo of the last soul who had come to this cursed place? Was I the next victim, or had I already become a grotesque contagion of the unending horror? The pulsating darkness licked at my heels as I stumbled backwards, the reality of my vanishing identity crashing down upon me like a tidal wave. I could feel the abyss below gaping wide, hungry for the warmth of my flesh, the lifeblood of my very essence. The room shifted again, walls contorting as if to contain my growing dread, and every pulse breathed life into the malevolent shadows that danced along the periphery of my vision. The beast loomed closer, its silhouette undulating in a grotesque manner as it towered over me, every jagged outline sharpening against the dim light that flickered like a dying star. I wanted to scream, but the sound became lodged in my throat, choked by the overwhelming sense of inevitable doom. I stared deep into those predators' eyes. In their reflective depths, I glimpsed countless souls, trapped and tormented, infinitely swirling. Each one a warning, a testimony to their downfall. "Your name is the key," it rasped, the guttural tones curling around me like a choking vine. "You forfeit your identity, and you shall escape suffering." In the depths of my fear, a memory surged, a flash of my family's laughter, our wayward adventures in broad daylight, the mundane joys that once tethered me to this world. The ghostly whispers intensified, weaving through my mind, beckoning me into their fold with terrible urgency. "They do not remember you. You are merely a fading echo," they sang. "Join us, surrender to the darkness, and you will be eternal." As the sound of my own heartbeat thundered in my ears, I fought against the tide of despair. I wouldn't let them take me. I wouldn't transform into mere whispers of the past. Yet as I clung to the fragments of my identity, the beast stepped closer, and I felt an oppressive weight settling on my chest that I peered into its maw, a swirling mass of shadows and shards of memory that promised release. "Join us, be reborn." It growled, more insistent now, its breath a fetid wind that clawed at my skin. Just then, I noticed a flicker of movement in the corners of the room. Shapes darted through the gloom, shadows spun with purpose, coiling like serpents around the stones. They were once human, I realized, their tormented eyes locked onto mine, filled with regret and vicious yearning. Extensions of the tormented souls before me, arrayed in mournful poses, their mouths moved in harmony, chanting, join us." I turned away from them, knowing their desires would only serve to trap me further. The air crackled with violence and desperation. I began feeling claustrophobic, pushed towards the abyss by the beast's growl. I swayed on the edge, my pulse racing, urgent and pleading survival or surrender, a decision made in the span of a heartbeat that in a moment of clarity, a primal instinct ignited within me. I was not ready to join the lost. I lunged toward an archway carved into the stone, the last gateway to freedom. But the moment my fingers stretched towards the surface, the beast struck, blocking my path with an overwhelming force. My breath quickened as its presence overpowered me, saturated with ancient power. "Halt!" It bellowed, rage echoing through the chamber, shaking every stone and igniting the shadows into a flurry of chaos. "Those who leave without giving themselves shall face the eternal night." The ground beneath me trembled violently, flames igniting from the fissures that ripped through the floor. The screams of the damned grew louder, their wails blending with the furious growling of the beast. In the distance, I caught a fleeting glimpse of an exit, a shimmering light formed by the fragments of hope trapped in the darkness that in a desperate surge of adrenaline, I launched myself towards that fragile glimmering sphere, feeling its pull as if it were a lifeline cast from the beyond. But in that moment, the shadows erupted with wild abandon, clawing at my limbs, wrapping around me like vengeful hands, pulling me back, dragging me into the abyss. "No!" I gasped, fighting against the merciless grip. But the shadows tightened their hold, draining my essence, blending it with the cries of countless souls who had once stood at this threshold. All at once, the beast lunged forward with a primal roar that split the air, and the fabric of reality began to warp. The walls bowed, twisting under unimaginable weight, echoing with the final cacophony of rage and fear. With one last effort, I reached out, trying to grasp that fading light. A single teardrop falling from my eye, was I sorrowful for what I would leave behind or for the soul that fought to cling to existence. In that brutal instant, the light flickered, and I plunged into the void, the very ground beneath me cracking open, revealing a passage to a grotesque new existence filled with screams, shadows, and torment. As my body tumbled into the darkness, a thought whispered through my mind: if I perished here, would I emerge reborn as one of them? With a final horrifying scream, my scream muffled beneath layers of rusted iron and trembling stone, the last glimmer of light dissipated, and I plunged into the abyss, uncertain of whether I would become the next lost soul, or if everything was merely the beginning of an unimaginable horror. The void swallowed me, but time itself felt elastic and warped, stretching into an eternity as I fell without direction. The scream, which had once suffocated in fear, now echoed hauntingly in the vacuum of my mind, reverberating amidst shadow and despair. There was a flicker of memory, echoes of laughter mingled with desperate whispers haunting me, tugging at the frayed edges of my fading consciousness. Suddenly, the descent halted. I collided with a surface slick with grotesque moisture, a corporeal result of a ghastly bioluminescence that painted a sickly, iridescent backdrop against the inky black. I lay there, gasping in shock, feeling the cold, clammy reality surround me. I pushed myself upright, scanning my surroundings. The air was heavy with an acrid scent, peppered with the taste of something metallic, like blood mingled with ash. A wealth of shadows writhed around me, slithering like serpents and dancing hungrily. They buzzed with malicious energy, inviting, taunting. Flashes of distorted faces emerged from the shadows, momentarily illuminated by the sickly glow, a grotesque gallery of anguish and waiting, all prisoners of this accursed space. Each face was familiar yet terrifyingly foreign, a mocking reflection of forgotten lives that had ventured too close to the edge, driven by a fading hope. "Welcome, wanderer," a voice creaked through the gloom, smooth as honey yet drenched in malice. I turned to see a figure emerge, clothed in tattered remnants of what once resembled a human form. Its eyes were pits of darkness, a void that threatened to draw me in. Its smile was a jagged crescent, split wide enough so that I could glimpse rows of sharpened teeth glistening with the essence of the damned. "The keeper of the lost," it cackled, the sound reverberating in my bones. "I have been waiting for you. The whispers tell tales of your bravery, or perhaps it is merely foolishness." The shadowy figure stepped closer, moving with an unsettling fluidity, slipping in and out of the luminescent glow. "I am not lost," I protested, my voice shaky but desperate. "I seek to escape this place." The keeper laughed, a sound that coiled around me like a vice. "Escape? Oh, sweet child, there is no escape. You have entered the weeping halls, where the forgotten dwell. Each soul here rages against the abyss, yet none can flee. You are now among us, you feel it, don't you?" The pull, I gritted my teeth, reaffirming my resolve. I remembered the weight of my family's laughter, the warmth of their existence, and I focused on that, a shield against the encroaching darkness. "You lie!" I shouted defiantly, forcing my voice to remain steady. The keeper's grin widened, exposing even more of its jagged teeth. "But what of your name, little one? What if I told you that your identity is already unraveling? I can see it, crumbling beneath the weight of despair." As it spoke, tendrils of shadow snaked closer, weaving through my hair and wrapping around my limbs, pulling me deeper into despair. "No!" I yelled against the oppressive dread, yanking my arm free from a phantom grip. I reached for the memories wedged deep within my soul, clutching them like a lifeline. But the shadows whipped around me, teasing my mind with glimpses of a life lost, images of my loved ones distorted and fogged, faces twisted by anguish and despair. "Once your name fades, so does your essence," the keeper taunted, leaning in as if sharing a dark secret. "Would it not be easier to release yourself from the burden? Like those who came before?" A resounding groan echoed through the halls as shadows began to shift and coalesce, forming figures that, emerging from the depths, a legion of lost souls, their mouths moving in sync as they chanted, "Join us, surrender your name." Their weary eyes were pleading, inviting, yet laced with despair. I felt the familiar tug and unfurling, insistent pull that threatened to unravel my mind. As they encircled me, my heart threatened to shatter. They were united by their loss, yet here was I, but a flicker of resistance against an unyielding tide. "Enough!" I shouted. Desperation lunging through my veins. I was stronger than this, and yet my voice wavered against the overwhelming chorus of despair. Waving my arms in a panic, I fought their advances, trying to separate myself from the chilling grip, but with every thrash, my breath quickened as shadows tightened around me. The keeper watched, malignant delight glimmering in its void-like gaze. In a sudden, paralyzing realization, I felt something shift beneath my skin, a warmth starting to ebb. My name, once a fortress, now felt like aged parchment, smudged and fading. Suddenly, an intense pain shot through me as if something deep within was being clawed apart, a wave of agony that overwhelmed my senses. My surroundings reverberated with laughter, the keeper and the many lost mockingly congratulating my inevitable demise. I stumbled, clutching my chest as the shadows screamed to devour me whole, but just as my resistance seemed to falter, a shimmering pulsation surged from somewhere in the depths, an echo of the light I had seen before. It pulsed gently, a heartbeat against the chaotic noise surrounding me, drawing my attention away from the keeper's uncaring eyes. Flee into the darkness. Or towards the light. Such a tantalizing choice to make, the keeper hissed, its voice dripping with anticipation as I swayed, teetering on the precipice of choice. As I fought my way toward that beckoning light, the shadows erupted fully, ensnaring me, and then the keeper surged forward, a twisted grin twisting its features, and I heard a sudden declaration from the depths: "Your name will be forgotten within the hour." With that chilling promise anchoring my spirit, I hurtled toward the radiance, feeling time freezing as the shadows, torn between light and dark, screamed in outrage. Would I make it before the darkness consumed me whole? The air crackled with anticipation as I grasped desperately at the fading warmth, but just as my fingers brushed against the edge of hope, the ground beneath me gave way, and I plummeted again, into an abyss where the light faded into an all-consuming dark. The last words I would ever hear echoed, "Join us," as the echo of despair swallowed my unspoken scream. The descent felt interminable, weightless, as if I floated within a womb of darkness. Each passing moment stretched into an eternity, my heart pounding against the silence, echoing like a lone drum in a forgotten battleground. The ground beneath me felt soft, viscous, and as I landed precariously, my palms sank into an unidentifiable muck that gripped and clung, holding me prisoner. An oppressive silence engulfed me, replaced now by an unsettling hum, an electric life form that crackled just beyond the reach of my sight. I looked around, daring only to twist my neck, ready to confront whatever unseen horror loomed nearby. The space was dimly lit, not by any natural glow but by a smattering of flickering luminescence that seemed to breathe with an otherworldly pulse, painting grotesque shadows on the damp stone walls. I held my breath, straining to listen over the hum, navigating the space, desperate for answers amid the disorienting aberrations. Whispered voices flitted at the edge of my hearing, familiar yet distorted, enveloped by an unsettling cadence that coiled around my thoughts like a snake tightening its grip. The whispers morphed, coalescing into words that converged into a singular name: mine. "Come find us," the voices lured, echoing with desperation. My pulse raced as I pressed my back against the cool stone, fearing the very air itself would betray me and slice through my resolve. "Be one with us, come home." I could almost feel their cold fingers brushing against my skin, sending shivers down my spine. Behind my eyes, memories flickered like old film reels, forming a montage of smiles twisted in agony and laughter drowned in echoing voids. My family, once vibrant and filled with joy, became specters, their faces hauntingly illuminated by the same luminescent glimmer surrounding me. "Stop!" I shouted into the dark, anger mingling with terror. "I will not surrender. I refuse to be lost like you." With each refusal, however, the whispers only grew louder, fueled by my fear. "Embrace the inevitability, join us, become one," they taunted, and I stumbled deeper into the shadows, fighting against their unrelenting pull. As I moved, a chilling breeze swept through the cavern, caressing the nape of my neck with an icy grip that sent prickles of raw panic coursing through my veins. In a sudden madness, I turned to flee, desperate for the exit I no longer believed existed. The darkness thickened, coiling like smoke, swarming around me, filling my lungs with an acrid, suffocating taste. I fought against it, but as I ran, the path twisted and warped, bends and turns became corridors of despair that led me in circles, enclosing me within their suffocating embrace. Through the oppressive gloom, I finally caught sight of flickering lights in the distance, a feeble hope breaching the encroaching darkness. I sprinted towards them, driven by instinct alone, but just as I reached the threshold, the lights faded, collapsing into thick blackness once more. My heart sank as a low, rumbling laughter echoed through the void, a chilling reminder of the keeper and the lost souls echoing its ghastly promise that I turned, breathless, realizing the shadows had morphed into a living tapestry, weaving together the essences of countless souls, their faces floating among the shadows, eyes wide with torment and yearning. The keeper stood at the periphery, its smile knowing and hungry, bellying a hunger for my surrender. "Do you feel the weight of your name slipping away?" it whispered, slithering closer, the shadows crawling at its heels. "You stand at the precipice of oblivion, all you need is to surrender." "No." I clenched my fists, nerves taut against the dark. "You cannot have me. They are not gone. I will find them. I will." But a shrill scream pierced the air, suffocating my bravado. A solitary soul severed from the mass emerged from the shadows, its face twisted with agony, mouth agape as it let out a wail that shattered my resolve. "Help us. We are trapped." The keeper's eyes blazed with delight, feasting upon my crumbling spirit. "Your bonds only tighten, wretched. 1. Save them. Or save yourself. Choose wisely, for the echoes grow restless." Suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled, the very essence of the weeping halls shifting like a wicked heartbeat. The walls closed in, pushing every shadow closer, the cacophony of desperate screams spiraled into a deafening crescendo. I gripped the moist earth beneath me, uncertain if it provided any comfort or merely a distraction from a reality I could no longer control. Then, within the maelstrom of despair, I heard it faint yet insistent, a high-pitched whimper, a familiar tune laced with grief, followed by the unmistakable laughter of a child. The world dimmed around me, plunging me deep within the memories I clung to, those flicking lights of hope that urged me forward. "Flee the keeper!" I shouted, clenching the ground as if through sheer will I could salvage the fading fragments of my family. "I will find you." But as I bolted towards the sound, the shadows erupted in fury, the darkness clawing at my heels, and I felt myself being pulled away from the familiar laughter, the shrouded light ahead flickering, losing its hold on me. As the last fragments of their essence faded into an abyss of despair, I was consumed by a chilling realization: the keeper was no longer just an observer but an orchestrator of my fate. In a final confrontation against the creeping darkness, I yelled into the void, "I will find you." And just as a glimmer of hope dared to pulse in the enshrouded darkness, a jagged pain tore through my chest, the whispers crescendoing into a deafening wail. And then it happened. With one last pull from the shadows, I was yanked into their depths, the screams of the lost echoing into an inescapable void, threading the echoes of my name deeper into the night until all fell silent, leaving only the reverberating question slithering after me: "What will you become?" As silence descended, wrapping itself around me like a suffocating shroud, I realized that I was neither dead nor alive, but trapped in a liminal space. I floated in an endless void, fragments of my existence splintering, memories peeling away like rotting leaves. My essence twisted, reshaping, struggling against the oppressive darkness. I screamed, yet sound crumbled into the abyss, dissipating into the void as if it had never existed. Then a light flickered in the distance, a cold illumination, buzzing with a frenetic energy that felt both inviting and dreadfully familiar. I drifted toward it, propelled by an instinctual yearning, hoping against hope that it would be a passage back to the world I had once known. As I approached, the pulsating light morphed into shimmering glyphs that flitted through the air like fireflies, intertwining and unraveling in chaotic harmony. That I reached out, my fingers grazing the warm glow of the glyphs, and a rush of memories surged back, images of laughter, warmth, and love. My family's faces glimmered in golden light, an ethereal vision that filled my heart with longing. But just as soon, those images twisted grotesquely, morphing into faces clothed in shadows, their hollow eyes pleading, silently begging for release from the curse that bound them. "Join us," echoed a voice, its tone sweet yet laced with malice, intertwining familiar laughter with sinister promises. "You cannot escape. You were chosen." The keeper's whisper slithered through my mind, pouring warmth over my frigid reality, seducing me with familiarity, but I was done listening. With a surge of defiance, I gripped the glyphs tighter, and they pulsed in response, vibrating through the fabric of my being. Suddenly, images of the tomb surged before me of the horrors I had witnessed, the darkness that had tried to claim me, the countless souls entrapped in a cycle of despair. I felt the weight of their anguish, like chains bound to my spirit, and realized their cries resonated throughout the depths of the tomb, each wail pleading for release. Were they asking for me to join them? Or had I already become one of them? As terror clawed at my consciousness, the glow intensified, no longer a mere lantern in the dark, but a beacon of hope. I forced the memories of my family to rise above the shadows, clutching onto the light that flickered like a desperate heart. No! I shouted into the void, interlacing light with shadow, letting it shimmer. I will not succumb. Suddenly, the air rippled, the dark voices echoing violently, "You cannot escape what you are." The keeper materialized beyond the glyphs, its form a blend of twisted flesh and shifting shadows, a reflection of the nightmare that was my own soul. It advanced, gnashing its teeth, each biting growl rippling with despair, old souls flickering within its presence. "Your name is the key," it hissed, rage boiling beneath its words. "Surrender, and be reborn." In that moment, I understood. I wasn't destined to be just a victim or a wandering soul, I was the vessel of every choice, every moment of defiance intertwined in the collective consciousness of the damned. And if I was to break their cycle, to shatter their chains, I needed to confront my own darkness. Summoning that forgotten ember of light, I stepped forward, resolute, heart pounding with an ancient rhythm. The glyphs flared and swirled around me, merging light with shadow, forging a path through the depths of horror that pulsated around me. Striding through the keeper's malevolent gaze, I grasped the truth: I had the power to forgive and reclaim my identity, to transform despair into strength. "Your name does not define you, your choices do," I asserted, crafting a shield with the radiant energy of the glyphs as I rebuffed the shadows clawing at me. They screamed in outrage, but I felt their collective energy shift from anger to confusion. In that crystalline moment, the keeper lunged forward, reaching out to snuff the light I wielded. But I pulled from my core, an explosion of brilliance erupting in a suffocating flash that knocked the creature backward, splintering shadow into shreds. I hurled myself into the light, acknowledging my choices: the good, the bad, the lost, refusing to accept the darkness, and then, just as suddenly, I was catapulted into a vortex of shimmering expanses, my very essence weaving through dimensions. Reality unraveled around me, memories swirling like autumn leaves in a tempest, until abruptly, it all stitched back into place. I gasped, awakening on the cold stone floor of the tomb. Sunlight filtered through the cracks overhead, bathing everything in a gentle warmth. Heart racing, I scrambled to my feet, but something felt amiss. The air was heavy with a lingering nostalgia, a whisper of the souls I had encountered. They lingered in the shadows, faces emerging among the walls, their mouths moving in silent chatter. I turned, horrified and confused, my mind struggling to comprehend. I had fought against being drawn into darkness, and yet what if my victory had not liberated them but instead sealed my fate? Soft laughter echoed from the darkness, and as I turned, the keeper loomed larger than life, its smile stretched wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "I told you," it chuckled, a sound chilling enough to freeze the very marrow in my bones. "You are trapped, you are ours now." The light behind me flickered and dimmed, revealing the truth I had yet to face. I wasn't merely a traveler in this horror, I had become part of it, and in that moment of realization, I understood: the tomb was alive, living and breathing with the echoes of every soul it had claimed, a cycle that would echo into eternity. With horror pooling in my heart, I felt weightless, knowing that every scream in the darkness was now my own. As the keeper's laugh echoed, I became acutely aware the tomb did not just trap souls, it transformed them into the keepers of despair, guardians of a new generation of lost souls waiting once more for the next victim to wander through their cursed doorway. And then my own voice joined theirs, whispering into the darkness, echoing into eternity: "Join us."